Constructing a graph class notes. Today we're going to take some steps into learning how to construct a proper graph. If you take a look, you should have two sheets of paper. You should have one that has your set of data, okay? And the question that we're actually going to be asking ourselves today is, how does study time affect one's science grades? So you can see that we've actually got two sets of data from two different people, and we're looking at it over the period of study time that they have. So you're going to be actually recording your notes on this sheet of paper here. Your notes are going to go on the side, and then we're actually going to be constructing our very own graph in the graphing boxes. So the first thing that we're going to do is start off with the main thing that you'll need in every graph that you make. The first thing that you always need to have on your graph is a title. Now, how do you get the title? When you're looking for a specific title, you want to first identify your variables. So looking at my set of data, you can see that we're looking at how study time affects one's science grades. So ask yourself for a second, what is my MV and what is my RV? Hopefully you've got that identified. On the side of your paper, for our first set of notes, step one is to formulate a title. Now, it shouldn't just be any title. Your title should include your MV versus your RV. Now, if you've identified your MV versus your RV, hopefully you've come to find that our MV is study time. And our responding variable, the one that we're going to measure, is one's science grades. So again, you've got your MV versus your RV. And that's step one of creating our graph. Okay. Our next step, as we work through the notes today, is going to be step two. After you've come up with a title, the next thing that you want to do is then label your axes. So the first thing you've got to sort of identify is where your X and Y actually are. So your X runs horizontally, your X runs this way, and our Y axis actually runs up and down. Kind of a trick to help me remember this, I always say Y to the sky. So Y runs up and down. Now, once you've kind of identified your X and Y axis, we then have to figure out which variable goes on which of our axes. So a trick that you might remember from last year is mix and dry. Mix stands for our manipulated variable, also known as the independent variable, goes on our x-axis. Dry stands for our dependent or responding variable, goes on the y-axis. So if you take a look, our manipulated variable is study time. So on the bottom of my paper goes study time. And if you look at our data table, it's study time in minutes. So don't forget to include your label. So study time in minutes. Excellent. So that's our x-axis. Our dependent variable, also known as the responding, will go on the y-axis. So if you look, our dependent variable is the one science grades in percentage. So on the side here, and that's going to be in percentage. Don't forget to always include your labels. Okay, so that's step 2. We label our x and y axes. Step 3 on your note sheet, you want to write even intervals. So after we've assigned our axes, the next thing we want to look at are kind of what we're going to be counting by. So we're going to start off looking at intervals for our x-axis. When you're looking at intervals, you always want to take a look at the data. So if you look at our data table, you ask yourself, what is your lowest number? Now, technically, we always start at 0. So our lowest number is going to be 0, and our highest number on our chart is 60. After you've looked at your lowest and highest number, you want to kind of take a look at the number of boxes that you have. So if you count, I've got 19 boxes. And I need to start at 0, and my highest number has to go to 60, but we always want to go past that. So you want to ask yourself, what is a good number to count by? And this is sort of just trial and error. So I'm just going to stick with and try to count by, let's say 5s. So let me try it. And you always want to make sure that when you're first starting your intervals, you do it in pencil. I know I'm using a Sharpie, but for you guys, you want to make sure that you do it in pencil. In case you find that these intervals aren't working, you can simply erase it and just start over. So I'm counting by 5s. Oops. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. I should say 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95. Now something to remember. I know our highest number on our data table is 60. You always want to go past 60, okay? We don't want to just stop at 60, because if you're asked to predict what their study time will be with, let's say, 80 minutes of study time, you want to make sure that you can extend your graph. So I actually went up to 95. So make sure that you've labeled your x-axes with even intervals. Not only are we counting by 5s, but if you notice, I decided to not skip any lines. So if you're deciding not to skip any lines, you want to keep that consistent through your x-axis. Okay, so continuing on step 3, we've done even intervals for our x-axis. Now we're going to take a look at what we should count by for our y-axis. So on our y-axis, we've got science grade. Now, we're going to be graphing 2 sets of data. Data for Drake's science grades and data for Jay-Z's science grades. So when you're looking at setting up your intervals for your y-axis, again, you want to look at your lowest number between both subjects and our highest number. So if you take a look, our lowest number is 72. Our highest number is 93. So you want to start to kind of look at your graph and think what you're going to count by. So take a look at your y-axis. And as you're looking at your y-axis, you want to look at the number of boxes that you have, and you want to think about what you should count by. Again, our lowest number, 72, highest is 93. So I'm actually going to do something so that I can count by 2s and fit everything on my y-axis. What I'm going to do is